Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to By the Horns, a Bitcoin podcast about South Africa. And tonight we are joined by the State Proof Stoic, all the way from the Eastern Free State. Carter, welcome to the show. Glad to have you, man.
Thanks, Ricki. It's great to be here.
Yeah, man. Very stoked to have you here. And the reason why we've got you on the show tonight is it's a theme we've touched on a few times before. But what we're really after is to talk about self-reliance, right? A lot of people today, obviously not in our circles, but a lot of people in general in the world seem to have this idea that government is their daddy and government must provide. And in my mind, if you do that, you run the risk of getting into a very abusive relationship. So what I think we want to chat about tonight is like how can you decrease your reliance on the government and take back some self-sovereignty and some power? And how do you see that playing out, and how do you go about achieving that with like meaningful practical steps you can take to like state proof your life, basically?
Yeah, you're hitting on a very interesting point, and I just happened to speak to someone very recently that was in Canada, and what they basically do there is they outsource everything. The state is kind of this, like you mentioned, this big daddy. They're very they follow rules to the T. Everything the state says, even if it makes no sense, they'll follow it. If the state says climb in that hole over there, people will probably jump in it with quite a strange fervor. But not just that, like she also mentioned to me, like fashion, the restaurant scene, it's all chains. There's no like small businesses or small restaurants. And she was in a relatively small town, so I was quite surprised at this. It seems like in some instances where government is overtly strong and people just kind of obey, that it also eats away at the cultural fabric of that culture. So you don't get the innovators or people that do things differently. It seems like it's almost a virtue to conform. And we've seen that throughout this whole COVID thing as well, where the people that conform and get vaccinated have 20 selfies of themselves with the needles and the doctors and hashtag so proud of myself. And I'm just like fucking sheep, but that's my opinion. But regardless, it becomes this virtue signaling kind of thing. And like you mentioned, like something I value more than anything is freedom, and also, being free, making my own decisions, my own sovereignty. And not relying on the state pretty much for anything. And I think it's going to be a controversial thing that I'm going to say now, but I think the great thing about South Africa with a lackluster government that's pretty much useless is we've kind of, as a people, not everyone, but most people, say especially the Afrikaners, become quite a resilient people that would do things without the help of the state, will fix things that's supposed to be done with the state. They'll pull together resources in the community. AfriForum is a perfect example of this. And then they'll just get stuff done. Waranya is also another example. And that's the kind of people I'm interested in, and that's the kind of people I want to be associated with. The other people that rely on the state, I can never be friends with people like that because they want to be spoon-fed every which way, and they lack critical thinking skills, and these are usually not the kind of people I like to associate with for obvious reasons, being a bit of a libertarian myself. So yeah, that's kind of my high-level intro into that level of obedience from the government, as you would say in your intro as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the pandemic that we're actually facing, the real killer pandemic we're facing, is a pandemic of a lack of personal responsibility. And people are just outsourcing their responsibility to someone else and thinking that the person who, or the institution they've outsourced their responsibility to, is going to have their best interest perfectly at heart. And that is the kind of naivete that'll end you up in a gas chamber. Like, this is like, you don't have to look even too far back in history to like see how this works out for people. But I mean, it is what it is. It's what people are doing. I do think the tide has turned, just in terms of like, 2020 to the current day, like this pandemic fast we've been going through, like the tide is turning. I don't know if you've seen the Project Veritas. I don't know if those documents are real. I really hope those documents are real. The ones that came out with, Fauci knowing about the lab leak and et cetera, et cetera. So he might get
There's
burnt
been a
for
lot
that.
of there's been mini leaks the whole time about that, of him knowing. In America, I know
Yeah,
it was under the Obama administration where the gain of function research was banned in the States. And
yeah,
because they couldn't do it in the States, they had to move it to our benevolent dictators, China, where everything goes.
yeah.
So then they moved it over there, and through subsidiaries of it's the NIH, right? They've been
Mm.
funding it,
And
and
Eco
it's been
Health
going on.
Alliance is the company
Eco,
doing the
that's
dirty
it.
work.
That's
Yeah,
that's the name. And they've just been like throwing funds at it like it's no one's business. And speaking of personal responsibility, the funny thing is what people don't know: the biggest mass murder in history, and this is without wars. It's been estimated that government is responsible for this is now labor camps. Um,
mm.
when government implements policies that creates famine, all these things, terrible policies that creates hardships for
like a
people.
like a war on birds in China in
It's
the
stuff like
50s.
that. Yes, yes. So the death toll of that stands at 260 million. It's 260 something million. That's an estimation based out of 8,000 reports. And this is without war. This is just on government policy. So if you have to think about it logically, the biggest mass murder in history is the government and multiple governments throughout times, right? So when people start saying that they trust the police, they trust state entities, I'm very skeptical, especially with our police force, especially with our militaries. I am very skeptical. I mean, the other day, you know this as well. They lost the capability to actually, what was it? The system in the back end where they catalog stuff and evidence that get used
Yeah,
in the courts.
the system
That they
that
didn't
keeps
pay for
all the
that
DNA
system.
logging. Yeah,
The
yeah,
system is offline. South African proverb, right?
yeah.
And then these fools don't have enough funding for that fingerprint, what do you call it,
Yes.
powder. They don't have enough money. The police station don't have enough money for target practice. We saw that with the
Mm.
riots where civilians had to actually
Give
protect
them bullets.
themselves and give them
Yep.
bullets and probably a few cokes and a bit of a meal as well, and maybe
Yeah.
KFC. You never know
Well,
with these
a
things, but
previous alumni on this show who you might know as well, Gideon Joubert, I was chatting
love
to him
him,
during the
my man.
July riots, and he was running flat out, coordinating getting bullets to the police from all over the country because the police on day one ran out of bullets. Now you could see this as a bad thing. I personally see it as a good thing. And it's a controversial take, but the reason why I see it as a good thing is because I don't believe the South African government is benevolent. Obviously, I think they're malevolent. They're robbing us blind,
Completely.
and it's just it's not a few more steps before they become like really angry and authoritarian and tyrannical. And but they don't have the capacity really to like genocide you in South Africa because they just
The
don't have the technical capacity.
incompetence is quite legendary, and the fact that they're so
Yeah.
incompetent is our saving grace. If they
Yes.
had the money and the competence, um, we'd be authoritarian like yesterday, and we'd be in our own version of 1984, Big Brother style. But luckily
Yeah.
for us, it's I see the status as in quite an interesting light. Uh, I see them as a bunch of mega parasites that extract value from productive citizens, so they can spend it with impunity, pay much more. Bring up the cost of basic services far more, and effectively those services can be rendered by the private sector far more cheaply than the state could ever provide it for. And they're just these parasites that give each other contracts and high fives behind our backs, and just extract value and raise our national debt to levels that will be unsustainable and will eventually crash. I think we had 3.9 trillion debt now. 2016-17, we were on 2 trillion. So that's almost a 2 trillion increase over this whole COVID period. So you do the math where this is
And
going.
I believe in 2002 or 2004 we had a surplus in our budget.
We I
We
remember it
reached a
was
surplus at
later.
some point.
It was later in the Mbeki era we actually did
Yeah.
have. And then when Zuma came in, pretty much that reversed real quick. And
Yeah.
cronyism was the order of the day, and shit went south. So the state for me is this ever encroaching. Remember, this the idea of a state is power and control. And this is not something that stays static, right? Because the state benefits from being alive, and most of the fucking people there are unemployable in any form, shape, way, or form in the private sector, right? These people will never walk into the private sector and get a decent job. They're unemployable. So it's
No
this
one's
shelter.
hiring for Kilimbalula. Not
Exactly.
happening.
Oh, yes. And he looks like a fucking go-go these days. I don't know what's happened there, but he's just been looking like a go-go to me in the last few years. I don't know what's been happening there. If it's the hairstyle or the pudgy face or both, or the glasses, that's probably another contributing factor. So it's this, the state exists to obviously, in actual fact, the traditional mandate was just to provide security and protect property, right? That was if I'm not mistaken, on this, and then also the judiciary, right? So to have courts and control that was the state's mandate. Now we've come to an age now where they pretty much control everything and anything, and them interfering in and creating policies and mandates has made a lot of things actually much more expensive than it should be. It's also kept the private sector from doing what it does best. And it's creating a lot of businesses in parallel. And the good ones, actually, the ones that are cost effective, innovative, and bring value to the end user or the customer, they flourish, right? And the others die. They get wiped out, or they change their industry and they kind of survive in one way or the other. Now, the state doesn't allow for that, especially with state-owned enterprises, SOEs. They exist because they exist, not because they add a lot of value or anything, because it's a mechanism for the state to siphon funds to their buddies and their cronies. So it's a mechanism for them to steal more. SAA, the post office, which is pretty much dead all over the country. All of these Denel, which is in shambles. People haven't been paid for months. The ANC can't even pay their own people. So when you look at these people and you look at what's been happening, especially in COVID, right, the overt progress of authoritarianism, the expenditure on COVID and contracts, which the politicians obviously use to fill their back pockets, right? That you can look at any country's GDP in the in the last year or two, and you'll see an insane increase on government spending on COVID. And what we've seen a lot is also some politicians that had a net worth of, let's say, a few million, which they shouldn't have because the salaries don't justify that in the first place. Put two and two together there, but they become much richer. Jacinda Ardern is one of them, that she's become mega rich, Prime Minister of New Zealand. A few other candidates, Boris Johnson et al. All of these people their net worth has increased in the last 2 years like you would not believe. So what I mentioned previously and earlier in this conversation is the state basically siphons money through taxes, VAT, and a lot of other creative ways. They siphon wealth from the productive, hardworking people of a country, and then they eke out relevance, but in a very expensive way. So I'm pretty much a anarchist in that regard, and a full-on libertarian. I don't believe in the state. I think they're a waste of money. I never opt in to be ruled by them. What do they call that contract that we all
the social contract that I've never seen
social
or signed,
bullshit,
but
which I've
apparently
never
I've
seen or
signed it.
signed. Never. And then also, we talk about the abolishment of slavery. If you work 40% of the month for the state, is that not a form of slavery if they tax 40% of your income? It's stuff like that that really puts me off. In my mind, what I like to see is a more decentralized system where we are decentralized. The money doesn't go to Pretoria and then gets eked out based on how many people are in a municipality, and everyone takes a cut, and then the money comes back in smaller amounts. If a decentralized world is far better, and an opt-in model where I say, cool, I want water or electricity, I opt in for the service. It's not forced upon me. And then I pay for it. If I already have my own infrastructure, I don't want to pay shit. Luckily, we can kind of get out of that if you've got your own solar panels and water, and we'll get to that in a bit. So for me, it's about being more free. So I always have this little little ad in South Africa. Are you fed up with municipal decay, load shedding, corruption, the COVID regime, and government overreach? If not, triple mask, get a booster shot, and enjoy the state boot on your neck. And there are truly people, and we're getting back to the people that are obedient, right? I want absolute freedom as far as possible within that, let's call it air quotes, social contract. And there's, I think self-sufficiency is one of the surefire ways to get there. I think we've got a terrible relationship with consumerism and with retail stores, where we are heavily reliant on goods and services externally. People hyper specialize in their jobs, and in a way I can understand that, because obviously that raises the pay, right? But what we lose when we do that is actual day-to-day skills to maintain and fix and create stuff. When I say create stuff, I mean produce our own food. If something breaks in the house, I can actually fix it, but now I have to call a specialist out to come and fix it, a plumber, electrician. What if you learn a basic of these things and you can fix most things? I don't expect you to kind of go on a motherboard and to actually take very little components and change them out. That's not necessary. But what if we are in a society where everyone is a bit more hands-on? You remember our grandparents, especially where they were part of that generation, and some of our parents as well, where they can pretty much, service a car themselves. They can fix most stuff around the house and everything. And that for me is very inspirational. People that can work with their hands and can actually fix things. So we've got this, and with the rides we had in KZN as well. I don't know if you know Louis Nell. Also a big Bitcoin.
We interviewed Louis Nell on the show actually during the
I
riots.
saw that.
It was going
I'm
down.
going to listen to that one, Canthan Pillay. I listened to the one with Aaron Sweets as well. Also a State Proof one. Guys should check it out. And they weren't able to actually get access to fresh produce. And luckily, a few weeks before, he bought some tomatoes and he was able to trade that for other vegetables. So if that's not a kind of a wake-up call for everyone to say, you know what, if something happens in KZN, or with trucks get blocked to go through the N1 to a certain part of the country, and fresh produce and food gets cut off, and the convenience store starts draining from food, and their basic essentials aren't available. Eye drops is one of the weirdest things, and contact lenses. There were weird shortages from this whole thing, right? And from COVID. Now, incrementally increase that if things really go south and you can't get food or anything and you're not ready for it, you're in big trouble. And you can't look after yourself or your family. And I don't think that's a position where anyone would like to be in. And with the lockdowns 2 years ago, I decided that I'm going to walk this path. And that's when I decided on me and my partner, when we got the opportunity, when both of us got remote jobs, we moved out of the city. Like you mentioned in the intro, I moved to the Eastern Free State, and we got a nice place, 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom, water, electricity, Wi-Fi included, 2,500 Rand a month. It's 16 kilometers outside of town. Lovely place. Started a garden.
You can't rent a parking bay in Camps Bay for 2,500 Rand a month.
I know this. So exactly that, right? So we decided we're going to save a bit, and then we're going to. I need to tell everyone this as well, because this is very important. What I'm going to say next is moving to a province where there's not overt decay, and to rural areas sounds very romantic. But if it's anywhere else than the Western Cape, chances are you're going to have potholes in the road. So your little Ford Figo won't do very well there. Let me be very honest. So I'm going to talk to you about a few things that I've learned here as well. Feel free at any time to interject or stop me if you have any questions or want me to add a bit of context to anything.
I do want to interject to do a quick unpaid promotion for Fraser's Folly.
Go for it.
Moor Coffee condensed milk stout, arguably the best beer in the country, made by Black Oyster Catcher out in Elam. near Struisbaai/Bredasdorp. Dirk Himan is the owner of the farm there. Hit him up. This is literally the best beer in the country. Anyway, unsolicited. They didn't pay me for that. Just a big fan.
Nice. I like
Cheers.
that unpaid promotions. Hopefully they'll send you a 6-pack or 20 and then make you official sponsor.
Well, I'm
That would be
hopefully getting
nice.
married at his farm in the end of the year, so hopefully he'll give me a good rate because I shilled him on the
Nice.
pod.
Nice. Keep shilling him and let people reach out to him and tell them that you heard from it first on this show and this podcast, and then hopefully they'll shill you later. They'll shill you right back. So what we were looking for is obviously a better quality of life for one. Outside of the city, I've never found the city as an appealing place to live. I've always found it dreadful. The traffic, the living on top of each other, the air pollution, the noise pollution, the loud noises, the police sirens. I've never found it that appealing at all. Yes, there's nice jewels, there's nice restaurants, there's some fun stuff, there's nice beers, but these days you can order it all online and consume it at your own home on your own pace, which can be terribly quick or terribly slow, depending on your mood the day.
You can order Fraser's Folly online directly from the farm as well. Okay, enough unpaid product placement.
It's sounding more like bro-motion than promotion at this stage, Ricki. But I won't judge you. It's
no, you know what it is actually. So I was at the farm the other day, and I was chatting to Dirk, the owner, and what he's trying to do. And we're going wildly off topic now, but this is kind of like moving out of the city vibe.
It's a fun segue. Go for it.
Yeah. And what he's doing there is he's like, listen, making craft beer like this costs 4 times what it costs to make like a SAB beer. So he's like, there's no ways I can compete with those guys unless you get like massive distribution and volume. He makes like 1,000 liters at a time. So what he's doing now is he's he actually uses South African coffee from Beaver Creek in this product. So it's all like cool locally sourced ingredients. But anyway,
we'll get to Beaver Creek in a second. So continue your story.
But what he's doing is like, it's a membership club that he's trying to start now, where it's like, cool, you join this club,
right?
And then they do limited production runs of this beer, and that's the only way you can get it. You can't, unless you go to the farm and buy it there. You can't find it in a shop. You can't get it. You got to be like a member. So it's like super exclusive, and that's how you keep this like cool craft brewing
subscription service
alive.
So it's a monthly subscription.
It's not really subscription. It's like batch based. So he'll have like a bunch of guys in a Telegram group. He's like, cool guys, we're doing a batch this month. Place your orders now. There's 1,000 liters, first come first serve. So like of the 200 people who are interested, maybe like 100 will be like, cool, I want into this batch, and then you get 2 cases sent to you, and that's how he does it. But he's making wine and stuff. He's been going for like 20 years making wine there. But now he's making the beer has been going for a couple of years. But I mean, it's like this. You got to think out the box when you're a farmer. Like you can't just go the normal route of.
That's why I was thinking like a subscription service where you send people a beer mix and maybe a beer with merchandise every month, something like that. Then the people there get first. If they make a small batch, they obviously are first in line to get the premium prototype beers, and then the rest of the people, kind of stand in line. And then it's like, okay, cool. The subscription people we've sent all of them. There's still some left, and then the rest of the people get a chance. So I was thinking of that model might actually be quite cool. And they can also source products from other nice smaller breweries, right? And add something from a different brewer that they like, and create this very interesting pack that they send out. It's an idea. I don't know how practical it is logistically or anything, but I think obviously if you sit long enough and plan well enough, you could probably pull something off like that. I mean, a beer subscription service that sends beers every month. I'd subscribe to that shit for sure. And every month it's a different type of beer. It's a bit of information about the beer. Even if that information stuff is digital, that'd be something that's quite nice for beer enthusiasts. And then now and again, they throw something extra in, like a cigar or something strange, and fun and novel, and add something new to them. Someone wants to join the distribution group, they add stuff that actually complements the beer. So like snacks or whatever. So yeah, that'd be a nice way to go about it. I like this idea.
You know who's actually been killing it in this game recently, and like he's someone I really want to get on the podcast. But it's the guy who started Boerbier. You know, during lockdown, he started. Is it Donnie Barnard? I think is his
Donnie
name.
Barnard, yes.
Yeah, he started Boerbier and then Boercola. I'd love to get him on the show, actually, just chat to him. But like, my understanding of his story was that during lockdown, he was like, "Cool, let's sell homebrew kits," and he's been crushing it by the looks of it. I mean, he's got his Boercola all over the place in shops all over the country now, and like his beer is doing really well. And that's just like people just taking, they're like, cool, like I'm not going to bootleg booze because that's not sustainable in the long term, but let me do the next best thing and sell people beer making kits. And like lockdown ended and he's still selling beer, so pretty cool. But what they're also doing out at Black Oyster Catcher is there's a Bartsketter's Boss is this weird little village. It's not weird, but like it's a quirky little village like down the road from Elam, and they've got some trout farms there. So like these guys at Black Oyster Catcher have got like homegrown trout that they like selling there as well. So like to add on to what you're saying, you could have like your beer subscription with some trout and some wine and a bunch of cool stuff from like the Overberg.
Awesome.
It's cool. But this is like, this is a good segue into like the home agriculture thing, which is what I really want to get into. Is like part of becoming state proof is like your own food security, and it might not be 100% food security. It might just be 5% or 10% food security. But more importantly, it's like that connection with nature and understanding the skills that are required and like the appreciation that is required to do that. And who knows, you might find a passion. You might find you got a passion for growing oyster mushrooms. And next minute, you got a business selling oyster mushrooms. I've got a friend in Tilbach actually who does this, and I teaches people how to grow oyster mushrooms. Because like it was his passion. He used to grow magic mushrooms at varsity, and now he's growing oyster mushrooms.
He did it the other way around.
He's gone straight. Yeah, he's gone straight. He's gone legit. But, you got to do what you got to do, bro.
Nothing against magic mushrooms. I think I have to say, like, remember the veterans, especially in America, coming back from the war. Psilocybin has been one of the best treatments for these veterans with no side effects, where big pharma's drugs always has side effects. And this can be erectile dysfunction, sleeping disorders, vomit, nausea, strange shit that they get. And psilocybin has been a surefire way. I myself went through some trauma in my life, and I've used it, and I've had excellent results. So I'm very pro magic mushrooms. So power to your friend. I'll probably grow some myself later. But yeah, I really like the idea of growing mushrooms, and we can talk about that a bit later in this conversation and elaborate on that, because I really think that next to meat, in most cases, mushrooms actually has more minerals and is actually more nutrient dense than most vegetables, with the exception of a few, of course. And it's an incredible addition to anyone's diet. And it's also incredible to grow them, because if you do it right, mushrooms grow so quickly. So for people that's more into instant gratification, like I'm a gardener, I'm got patience like a motherfucker. I can wait. I can grow things from seeds to the end. But other people might not have that patience, right? And I think mushrooms and is an excellent way to get people started in growing something that, if you do it right, it actually grows relatively quickly and aggressively. So I love
consistently.
Mushrooms.
This is the thing.
Oh
with
yeah,
mushrooms,
multiple
right? So
flushes. Yeah.
Yeah. So like if you're growing shiitake or oyster or something, like a hardwood growing mushroom that grows in wood, right. Like you'll take like an oak log and you'll drill some holes into it, and you'll get a dowel that's got your spores impregnated on it, bang it in there, covered with wax. Then wet that log, leave it for like a year. That's the long part. But then for the next like 10 years, you'll have flashes of mushrooms just coming out, every couple of months, you'll just have mushrooms. Like,
yeah, that's incredible. And you can do that, or you can do it in a bucket with a few holes with wood, saw wood, and you can do it like that. That's the easy and quick and dirty way, right? But your way exactly is incredible, because especially if you have if you have a few trees around you and there's a few stumps in the area, like kind of a foresty, woody place, that's an excellent place to do it because it has the shade, it has the humidity. And there's obviously a few rules. You don't want to do this in the open sun. You want some shade. So you've got kind of like a natural forest thing going on. And then you also want to inoculate, and usually the edible mushrooms, they only eat dead wood, which is excellent. They're not like completely parasitic where they actually kill live wood, right? So that's the only things you need to consider. But you're right, you can have these yearly and well, in some cases, depending on the season, monthly flushes. Flushes basically, if you cut kind of everything off, it will grow again from scratch multiple times. And it just depends on the season and time of the year, because in most places, winter is probably not the best time for mushrooms. But when it's a bit humid and it's hot, that's usually when most mushrooms flourish, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know of any that grow in the cold or in snow or anything like that.
So there's a American mycologist called Paul Stamets. You might be familiar with his work, but so
I
what
have
what
his, I have
Paul
his book actually. Sorry, I just have to humble brag here. Sorry,
humble brag.
humble
There you
brag.
go.
Putting it out there. It's an excellent book for those listening
Yeah.
and not watching. Growing Gourmet and Medicinal Mushrooms, third edition by Paul Stamets. This is the definitive edition for you to do home growing, or if you're thinking of going commercial, buy this book. It's worth every rand.
So what Paul Stamets did was they've been doing this for years, but they were doing selective breeding on mushrooms to try to break down hydrocarbons. So they took a bunch of woody material and they doused it in motor oil, like used car oil, like gross, hydrocarbon mess. And then they inoculated it with these mushrooms that they'd been selectively breeding to break down hydrocarbons, and it was oyster mushrooms. Um, and they had a control heap that they didn't inoculate, and then the heap they did inoculate, and they ran a bunch of, like, it was a scientific study, and basically what they found was that these oyster mushrooms that had been selectively bred had no problem breaking down the hydrocarbons and consuming the oil. So, like, as a remediative agent in to clean up oil spills, etc., like mushrooms are like they're mind blowing because I told you before we started the show, like, I've got a background in biology, and the thing about mushrooms is mushrooms are closer to animals than they are to plants. And you see a mushroom and you're like, oh, that's a plant, or like it's a fungi, but like it's plant-ish, plant-esque. Not the case.
Yes.
Mushrooms are crazy. Like, the reproductive cycles of mushrooms are so varied and so different. Like, it really is a mindfuck when you try to study them,
Yeah. No, for
understanding how
sure.
they work. But they are extremely resilient. They grow in all kinds of environments. And when we think of a mushroom, we think of the fruiting body, which is like the mushroomy part that you eat, or you chow to get high. But mainly mushrooms are like mycelial, so they're just growing underground or under the
Right.
surface, and that's the vegetative body of the mushroom. And in some cases, these organisms can be huge. So, like, in the old growth forest in Oregon, you've got these mushrooms that are a single organism that are thousands of years old and thousands of miles big, because they connect the root systems of all these
Yeah.
massive old redwood trees like a plant internet, and they transport nutrients between plants, between species even, so not even the same species,
Yeah. Yeah,
transfer
I know
nutrients across.
the mother, and like if there's a mother tree or so, and it's got like small little seedlings coming up, they can transfer. But like you mentioned, interspecies, different plants, different species as well. The one requires nitrogen, the other one might require something else, and it's not in its immediate area, but the other one has it, and then they actually exchange
Yeah,
those elements with each other, and it's incredible.
but it's not
And
it's not it's not like plant communism. It's it's plant capitalism, what's going on there,
yes, they help
because
each other.
nothing's for free. Well, they're trading with each other, because
Trading. Yeah, that's the
what
right word.
what the what the fungi requires is carbon to grow, and what the
Right.
plants require are nutrients. So the fungal hyphae, so the what you would think of like a root, like the underground tendrils of these mushrooms, is called the hyphae. And what they do is they secrete organic acids that then solubilize nutrients. So, like, if you think of like a piece of wood in the ground, what
Right.
happens is the mushroom hyphae grow all over it, and they secrete these organic acids. And these organic acids then cleave off the nutrients like phosphate and nitrogen and selenium and whatever mineral or nutrient the plant would require. they secrete these organic acids, which then break these off the carbon chain, and then they absorb those into the hyphae, and then they transport those all the way to whatever plant wants it. Then somehow, like this part, like the scientists who are studying this, but like it's pretty murky still. But how the nutrient exchange really, like the mechanism behind it. But basically, what happens is the plant will be like, cool, I want nitrogen. It will then trade a
Right.
nitrogen molecule for a carbon molecule because plants produce carbon in abundance through photosynthesis, and
Right. Right.
the fungi needs the carbon. So it'll then give you the nitrogen in exchange for the carbon. A little plant capitalism going on there, bit of trading, industrious plants. But how they do this is through mycorrhizal fungi, and specifically arbuscular mycorrhizal fungi. And what they do is they form these weird placenta-like structures called an arbuscule that grows into the plant's roots. So like if the root is here, it'll like push into it, and have like this
That's incredible.
large convoluted surface area where nutrient transfer and carbon transfer can take place. And then
It's
that is
insane.
where,
But actually
yeah, that's
adds,
where the
like
nitrogen
you
gets
say,
transferred.
it adds a structure to actually enable that. It actually creates a structure where they can trade and that enables the plants to trade.
And that's evolved over billions of years, right?
It's insane. Another thing I'd like to add to this is when you are brewing beer or growing mushrooms, if you have a grow tent, pro tip, put that mushrooms inside of the grow tent or the ferment. The reason why, the mushrooms release a fuck ton of carbon dioxide. So does a ferment. If you're fermenting beer or anything, cheese, doesn't matter what you're fermenting. You can also ferment grapes. That's actually wine. If you ferment, put it in your grow tent. Your plants will actually greatly benefit from that carbon dioxide that's released by your ferment. So that's just a little grower's tip from my side. I don't know if you've, Ricki, if
Yeah,
you've done
because
that before.
plants love carbon dioxide, which is an interesting one. Maybe we don't want to go the climate change discussion, but like increased CO2 is going to make plants grow more.
And we
I
actually
mean,
find that a lot of cannabis growers, especially, get in extra carbon dioxide in their growing environments, in their tents. They buy the actual gas tanks filled with carbon dioxide that's slowly released.
yeah, but that's for indoor growers who suckers for punishment. Most
Oh,
lazy
yes.
growers just grow outdoor because indoor growing is a faff. Just like
Okay,
there's
yeah, it
sun,
depends where
there's
you at.
water.
It depends where you're
Yeah,
at.
yeah, very
Let
true.
me give you an
And
example, Ricky. Where I'm at the moment, I'm also growing a bit of cannabis, right? We've had rain and a lot of rain, almost daily and bi-daily, and the humidity is insane. So much so, I get a kind of a fungus on my flowers that actually makes my flowers rot. It just like dries them out,
yeah, bud
like a
rots.
like butterot.
Bud rots is the worst
Exactly.
thing ever.
Dude, so I have to actually fucking carry. I've got the smaller plants in crates, and I carry them indoors every day, and then I put a fan on top of them because in the evenings, especially when they're releasing, that's the dark phase. I think it's gonna. Now I'm being an idiot because I'm going to switch this. They actually do release the water through the leaves, and also I think is it oxygen or
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, oxygen,
yeah.
right?
That's
But
through the whole photosynthetic process, right? They're going to be
right.
releasing
But
releasing
around
CO
them, it
or
actually
oxygen.
creates yeah. So if you don't have a wind, if you don't add a bit of an airflow, it
Yeah,
actually
you get a
condenses
humidity.
humidity, condenses around the
Yes.
plants, and that exacerbates the problem. So
Yes.
so so
So
that's the thing.
the reason why this happens is because on the plant's leaves you've got these things called stomata, which open up to allow for gaseous exchange. So that's when
Oh
it's
man, high
taking
school
in
biology. Here we
CO2.
go.
It's taking in CO2 and it's giving off oxygen. But when oxygen is
Right.
going out, oxygen binds to a water molecule and you get H2O, obviously.
There we go.
And then you've got water vapor coming out. And this is how plants lose water. This is why when plants are photosynthesizing during the day, they droop and get thirsty if they haven't got enough water in the soil. So it's because
Right.
they're losing oxygen. What's really interesting, weed is a C3 plant. So a C3 means it follows a certain photosynthetic pathway. But you also get these
Right.
plants that make use of a thing called CAM metabolism or crassulation acid metabolism. And what this is like all your fat planter, like all of your little cacti and things. And these guys, they photosynthesize at night. because they've adapted to dry environments where you want to be doing your photosynthesis at night where you're not losing as much water to heat, because obviously the hotter it
That's
is, the more water
insane.
you lose. So if you're
Oh
in a
shit!
water
So
scarce
I never
environment,
knew that that was the opposite. I don't know that they actually switched it around. That's so cool.
yes. So what these plants do is during the day, they convert sugars to an
Right.
acid that then accumulates your carbon. And then at night, the photosynthetic process happens, and then it deacidifies, becomes more alkaline, and you have your gases exchange taking place at night. But so like this is like evolutionary pathway that's developed over billions of years to deal with like hot environments. It's mind blowing, and we have only scraped the surface of like understanding how this stuff works. Like from a botany perspective, like we've only understood how photosynthesis works. We still only know it theoretically. Like we know we can't reproduce it. Like humans aren't able to produce a fake photosynthetic plant, yet.
Yeah.
We've only understood this for like 100 years. We've only able to like really understand the science for like 50 years, 60 years. Um, and the hubris that mankind has to try to recreate those systems. And this is where like indoor agriculture, so like vertical agriculture, for example. So I know this is something you're into, which is growing hydroponically and indoor
It's
growing.
one tower. It's not yet
Mm,
it's not yet massive. I've got a 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. So this is a 80 pocket system. In
mm.
every pocket you can add 2 to 3 plants depending on the girth of the plant. Ladies love the girth. So sorry, throwaway casual comment. So yeah, it's an experiment still. I'm still
Yeah,
weighing the pros and cons, right? So
yeah.
continue, please.
So the vertical agriculture, I was very into this in like 2014, 2015. I was like, this is the future. Like, cost of fuel is only going to go up. I still believe peak oil was a thing back then. And I was like, fuel costs are just going to keep going up. And like transporting food into the cities is going to become cost prohibitive. Stupid me didn't realize that like there's a shitload of land in South Africa for producing food.
Yeah,
And
first world countries
this,
maybe to actually give you a bit of a helping hand here,
yeah,
and you probably know this already because you're very well educated in this. First world countries is a bit different like this. They have very little fields and stuff left, and actually I've spoken to people that's gone overseas, and they say the local fresh produce is very bland, and I can actually imagine why, because prolonged monoculture, if you're only feeding the plants the elements that they need to actually grow, they don't get the trace elements and the other elements that they actually need to thrive, right? With like an organic grow, right? So it makes sense to me why, with time, if you keep doing the same thing and you don't change anything and you're just adding these industrial chemicals to your food supply and to your soil, eventually that soil will become useless because you're not using any regenerative agriculture to actually add microbes and like we mentioned earlier, mycelium to the ground and actually growing very good vegetables. You're just adding the base stuff that they need to grow and look good, but the nutrition, let's call it the nutrient density
yeah,
of the fruit or the vegetable is shit. There's very
yeah.
little in it that actually adds to you to add to your diet that benefits you as a human. And I think that's a big problem. And we were heading into the same direction unless people are growing organically, right? I don't know what your
Yeah.
opinion is on that.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And like we had Farmer Angus on the show end of last year to talk about exactly this, and like the his perspective, and I largely support this, is that humans are committing a global suicide event with our food systems.
Yeah,
The
as it is now, I agree.
Yeah, and the reason why I would say that is because the Earth is covered by a tiny thin skin of topsoil, and that topsoil
Right.
has taken millions of years to develop, and we are literally flushing it into the sea. We are destroying it. We are like not treating it with the respect it deserves, and that is us. That is our that is what sustains us. If the topsoil is gone, humans are gone. Like complete ecosystems collapse, everything's fucked. Like we're done. So regenerative agriculture is the process of rebuilding topsoil for one of the things it does, but it's
Mm.
to put back more than you took out, in a nutshell. so that you
Right.
can have future generations can keep living sustainably and farming sustainably, etc. And I mean, this is where I think Bitcoiners and libertarians, etc., we cop flack from the lefties because they're like, oh, you guys just like care about money and like, obviously they're fucking morons, so they don't understand this. But like, I'm a greenie and an environmentalist at heart, but I'm also I also understand that like the biggest the largest contributing variable to our standard of living is the amount of energy we consume. Like
Right.
humans, the more energy we consume, the better our standard of living. That's the metric. So if your kilowatt hours or joules of energy, that's probably a better way to use it. Joules of energy we can muster is like a determinant for how good we can live, how well we can live. But obviously that comes within the paradigm of having a ecosystem that can sustain that level of energy output. And if
Right.
we destroy our soil, and think that it's okay, we can grow things hydroponically in vertical farms in the cities, in mega cities, to like deal with that. Like that's not going to cut it. Our health is going to suffer. It's not just a nutrition issue. It's going to be our microbial biomes in our gut for one is going to be gone, which means our immune
That's
system is
a
going to be
that's a,
gone.
that's a question that I've had. I was actually thinking about this very deeply the other day. I was like, okay, cool. I put the water soluble nutrients in the water, but where's my microbes at? Right. I didn't add any microbes to this nutrients, and I know the soil in my garden. I top dress with. We spoke about this before the show. I take coffee grounds from a local roastery, so I give them a bucket a week. So the bucket is about 25 kilograms worth of grounds. So I either add that as to my composting heap, and the rest I actually take to my garden and I top dress the soil. And what has happened is I've realized that the soil has become more aerated because it's attracted a lot of earthworms. And with that as well, some of my food scraps I also add to the soil. And I realized that, oh, my soil's more aerated, it's more organically dense, it's actually becoming better soil. And then I top dress that with a bit of mulch. So here we've got bales, so I can actually use the straw and add it to the garden at no cost. Right. So I'm using what's immediately available to me in the garden. And I was just wondering, okay, so this aeroponic tower is cute. It gives the base nutrients, but oh my shit, I don't even know if there's products in the market in South Africa. I know in the US they are actually that you add to the water. They don't smell. They're actually a clear liquid, and you can add microbes to the water supply to your reservoir. Do you know of anything locally that's being produced that adds microbes to the water, Ricki? I'm not aware
You,
of
you
anything. I haven't done my research, to be quite honest, but you're more in the market, a bit
Yeah,
better
so I
than I
mean,
do.
I used to work for a organic biotech firm, and we used to produce microbes in bulk, like probiotic microbes. So you can get probiotic microbes to add to it, but the thing is, that's like 15 species or whatever the case may be, 20 species, whatever. It's not 1,000 species, it's not 1,000,000 species. Like in the soil,
Yeah.
if you take a handful of soil, I take a teaspoon of soil, there's more microbes in there than there are people on Earth. If you take a handful,
Yeah.
there's more like microbes in there than people that have ever existed. And the species diversity, like most of those species have just never even been described. They can't be cultured, they can't be grown. Like we just know so little. Like Elon's trying to go to space, but look in the soil, try to figure out the microbes. Like there's a lot more interesting. There's aliens living in the soil. I'm telling you, there's some crazy things. There's a microbe. I think it's a pseudomonas. I might be wrong. Anyway, but it can withstand radiation, up like huge amounts of radiation that will obliterate its DNA, and it can pull its DNA back together again. You're like,
What?
how? How does this do this? Like there's Pseudomonas living off the Fukushima, chowing radiation, eating it, literally. For anything that we want to degrade on Earth, there's a microbe that'll degrade it for us. So, like, I think,
Mines are a good example of that as well. So
yeah,
all the
yeah,
waste
yeah,
the mines
exactly.
produce. I
Exactly.
know
Like
there's
acid mine water.
there's a there's a certain plant I know that they use in aeroponics. So they actually take the plants and they add them to the pockets. The plants then actually absorb the metals in the water, and then they harvest the plants in bulk, and they actually extract the metals from the plants. Do you know what those plants
Yeah,
are? I just
yeah, they're doing it on the mine dumps in Joburg as well, to pull the arsenic out of the
mm,
wastewater from the gold mines. It's a type of grass. I can't remember the
yes,
name.
you're
Anyway,
right.
that's enough detail
I'll
for someone to
speak.
go and duck go and figure it out.
Yes, yes. So it's quite incredible. So um,
Yeah,
I want to touch on our main subject, and I know we've
50
been
minutes in.
yeah, I know. Maybe you and I can keep going for a bit, and you can break it into 2 episodes. I don't know, however you please. But
We'll have
uh,
a repeat. We'll have a V2 soon, I'm sure.
or V2. So self sufficiency. I kind of I've read a few books, right? So currently on my rack there's the Resilient Farm and Homestead. I've got Introduction to Permaculture from Bill Mullinson. He's kind of the father of
Yeah,
permaculture. He's from
Bill Mollison.
Australia.
Yeah, it's Australian.
Love
Yeah.
love the guy. I need to. So this is the introduction. It's not the permaculture one with the
Yes.
infinity sign. I need to buy that one, but it's so fucking expensive. It's like 2.5 grand.
Yeah.
And then I've got. I don't know if you've heard of him, John Seymour. He's kind of the American self-sufficiency homestead Jesus. So he's got a book called The New Complete Book of Self-Sufficiency. It's a compilation of a few books of his. It looks like this.
Okay.
Go check it out. Now,
Yeah.
what I love about this book is it covers everything. So there's the meaning of self-sufficiency: food from the garden, food from animals, food from the fields, food from the wild, in the dairy. It's kind of a, I think it's a play of in the Navy, by the way. In the kitchen, brewing and wine making, energy and waste, crafts and skills. Now, the crafts and skills is a particularly interesting topic to me as well, because being self-sufficient, you need to be able to fix shit, right? So they go on about the
Has he got
workshop
has he got
layout.
Bitcoin has he got Bitcoin mining in there? Or is that the new
I
edition?
think I think I need to add that, but what they do have, and on the contrarian scale, is the workshop building, springs and plumbing, knots and ropework, basketry, pottery. Man, it goes on and on. Woodwork, steelwork, all these kind of things. And I've been reading these books, and I kind of put together what I think self sufficiency is, and for me, it's I'm going to give you a passage because I actually put some thought into this. Um, so I consider self-sufficiency to be a lifestyle or a philosophy where one strives to become as free and independent from state and corporations as possible. So that's the kind of premise that it stems from. When I think about self-sufficiency, that's what it allows me to do, right? By developing the skills and knowledge that enables one to produce essential items and maintain your homestead slash workshop. So whatever you're creating and the space you live in, you need to be able to maintain it as far as possible yourself. If you're very remote, you need to be able to do a lot of things. I worked in the Karoo for a project at one time, and I remember these people had so many tools. They had lifts for the buckies. They serviced their buckies and their tractors themselves. And it speaks to that uh, haphazardly. These people were actually English and Afrikaans. So I was quite surprised with the English people also being so self-sufficient, because
I was
they
just
don't
gonna
have.
ask you that now. Were they
Yeah,
definitely
I
not
was
English people?
very surprised by the English people being so self-sufficient, right? And then I'd say to some people, self-sufficiency means very different things to very different people, right? So it is. So for some people, it's growing their own food. For some, it's learning a trade or two to fix and maintain a homestead or house. Getting off the grid or not to pay municipal rates and taxes. Exactly where I'm going. I want to produce my own power, and I want to filter my own water that's catch water and hopefully a borehole, and I don't have to play part anymore. Even if I'm in the Western Cape, which I actually think they're one of the better governments, I don't like government as a rule. I don't discriminate. Like, even if you're the Western Cape government and you are effective and you actually do better than the rest, still, if I don't have to give you money, I won't. Um, I also think that it goes into the digital nomad lifestyle as well, right? And that allows a lot of people, I think outside of South Africa for 181 days, I think that's 6 months of the year. You don't have to pay income tax on 1.2 million rand annually. You can correct me if I'm wrong there, Ricki.
I mean, that's roughly correct. I mean,
Roughly
like,
right. Okay.
yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Not a
Man, it's
financial
probably
advisor.
changed
T's
this
and
year
C's
by
applies.
Yeah, it's probably changed slightly by a few rands this year, but like, yeah, they're trying to introduce that double taxation, especially on yacht crew and offshore crew. But it's if you're under that 1.2 million or 1.3 million rand, then yeah,
It's
you're
difficult to
okay.
do that, right? So
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
I would consider all of those things a step in the right direction, right? And then maximizing energy capture and minimizing waste by recycling, upcycling, and composting. What do I mean by that? It means if I have a stove that's running and I can relay some of the heat into let's say, for instance, I've got a greenhouse. I can relay some of that heat to the greenhouse, especially in the winter. So I can still grow summer crops in that greenhouse. What do I mean by upcycle? Upcycling is basically the process of taking stuff that I would usually throw away, and I'm using it in some other way. I basically take yogurt. If you take the yogurt containers, you drill a few holes, they become plant pots. And I've got a fuck ton of plant pots because of the yogurt. And now I've bought a kit where I can actually make yogurt and cheese from fresh milk, and I actually prefer raw milk than pasteurized milk when I start making stuff. Um, I just believe in it's a bit more superior in taste and
have,
flavor.
have you got a cow or a goat, or are
I
you
I don't
into
have a
anything?
cow or a goat. I would love to have a cow because a cow gives you milk. Milk can become butter or cream ad infinitum, and
Yeah,
also cheese, which I love. So at the end of the day, we're looking at a property that won't be that rural, but I would love to have like a farm buddy that I go to and say like, look, I'll make you I'll bake sourdough breads, or I'll make this for you. I want 20 liters of milk, raw milk,
a week or whatever. Yeah,
weekly, and then I'll make all of those things because I really want to get into that. I just baked my first breads it was yesterday. I made two smaller breads and then a bigger one, and it was sourdough bread that I made with a sourdough starter. It was amazing. It was
man,
so good.
I went when lockdown started. I learned to sourdough, like classic
Oh,
lockdown move. Like,
so
were you
good.
in lockdown if you weren't making your own beer or making sourdough bread? Anyway, I made sourdough,
Exactly.
got fat, but delicious, very good. Now I don't eat carbs anymore. I'm not about that fat lifestyle, but sourdough is fucking
Look,
great and yeah,
exactly.
delicious.
But I'm also like, if you're gonna eat carbs, eat it in the morning. Or if you fast, like we fast, we eat twice a day. So we eat at about noon, and then we eat at about 4 or 5, and then we're done for the day. We don't eat 3 or fucking 6 times like other people do. So if we really feel like it, we freeze our bread for obvious reasons because we don't want to become fat. Or you just make a smaller bread and you can eat it in 2 or 3 days, right? So
Yeah,
that also
yeah,
decreases the sin. You still have the joy of the sourdough, but it's in a
it
smaller
is a
container, and
joy.
you can exactly, and it's such a joy. and,
Yeah,
and and if you want to be a real South African, you have to do sourdough briberoities. And I will probably create a restaurant, and I'll make billions of dollars because I make sourdough briberoities, and it's the best. And then if
man.
you
The
make your own cheese as well, holy shit,
oh
dude,
yeah,
you're gonna rule this universe.
the best sourdough thing I made was I made a sourdough deep dish like Chicago style pizza with like a sourdough
Oof.
base, and that was amazing. That was yeah,
Man,
really
that's
good.
that's insane. So I'm
Yeah,
picking up from my last line where I said you have to maximize energy and minimize the waste by recycling and upcycling and obviously composting, right? So you can use a lot of your organic waste compost. And then I also want to add that if you choose the self-sufficient lifestyle, it's not one of consumerism. It's a lifestyle of minimalism where you actually buy things to last. You buy a wooden table that's well maintained and you treat it with oil, or you do what you have to with that table, but it's going to last a lifetime. I don't believe in buying shit every 2 or 3 years. I hate consumerism. I hate the fact that people have become addicted to buying stuff and think it's a status symbol. For me, it means nothing. What I care about is having something that looks legit, that's handcrafted and not from fucking China, and looks good, and I can keep it for a lifetime and probably pass it on as well. That's what I care about. If it's an electronic appliance that can do the same, that's a bonus. But I mean, things like furniture as well, good furniture. There's a few things like a good wooden table that I would recommend to anyone if you can. And then this is not something that, again, self-sufficiency doesn't mean you go all out, right? You can start in small increments. But if you want to take on woodwork, start making racks and maybe tables and stuff later. But start with racks and smaller projects. But if you can later, build a table. And then it's your table, it's got your signature on it. It's exactly as you want it, the size you want it, the type of food. There's something very gratifying about that. And I think with consumerism and us having the ability to buy everything online, we've lost that connection with the actual material of the stuff that we buy, right? I still like maintaining and making stuff with my own hands. Um, I'm very new in the process. I admit I still have a long way to go. But woodwork is one of those things that I'm very attracted to, and I probably want to make my own dinner table one day. But for now, I'll just create racks where I can grow plants on, and that would be good enough for me for now. Um,
On that consumerism thing, and like this is obviously quite late in the podcast to get to it. It's crazy. I don't think we've had a pod yet. We've only got to Bitcoin 1 hour in, but this is wait. We've
okay,
had a
so
lot of fun.
I'll.
A lot
Do you
of fun
want me
talking
to
about all
add? Do
this
you
stuff.
want me to add my Bitcoin part now, and or what do you want
Well,
me to do
maybe let
here?
me segue with this first. And like, I think the root of consumerism is fiat culture, and fiat culture comes from fiat money and from money printing. So think about like
Right.
how many electronic items do you still own that were from your childhood, like a fan or like a blender or maybe even a toaster or something that like you grew up with this fan and this motherfucker is still with you, like it's still around. Like, but you can buy a fan now and in 3 years time that fan doesn't work anymore. Why does a fan from the 80s still work but a fan from the 2020 or like the 20 teens not work anymore? Like, why are electronics not lasting anymore? And it's sure complexity is all of that stuff. Like we're talking basic things, compare apples to apples. Like a fan is a great one. And I think
Right.
it comes down to the fact that like there's an incentive built into our society because of fiat money, because there's an ever expanding money supply, because people are just running that money printer, that there's an incentive for manufacturers to turn around items as quickly as possible. And we hear about planned obsolescence, and this comes from, in my opinion, comes from fiat culture because, and this is what drives consumerism. Because if I am a manufacturer, I'm incentivized to sell you a replacement product as often as possible,
Mm.
but on a sound money standard. And this is why I use the 70s as a benchmark, because in the 1971 the US decoupled from gold, the US dollar, and the whole world pre that was tethered to gold, and gold was tethered to US dollar, and US dollar
You
was
mean
tethered to gold.
did they decouple from gold in the 70s?
1971, Nixon closed the gold window in
Nixon, yeah,
1971.
Nixon did that, yeah.
What the fuck happened in 1971? Great website, check it out. But there's a whole bunch of charts that just you look at all these charts. WTF happened in 1971. You look at all these charts, you're like,
But you
some
also
fucking
you
weird shit's
also
going on.
just I'm just going to put this little nugget in there just for shits and giggles. Also go look at Woodrow Wilson's sellout to the big
Fuck that
banks.
guy.
Fuck that guy.
Anyway,
Yes, I
yeah,
hate him
yeah.
so much.
He's the ultimate globalist. Anyway,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
Globalist
yeah.
shall if
That's
ever
a
was
little
one.
nugget in the show. So
Yeah.
Woodrow Wilson, go read up
And Jan
about that.
Smuts.
Oh, here we go.
And I know you
Here we go.
Afrikaans people have a special place for Jan Smuts, but yeah. Special kind of hatred for Smuts.
He's braaiing on an
Anyway.
Afrikaans spit in hell somewhere. We do that to him.
But yeah, so in the 70s, the US dollar decoupled from gold. And that's where you had a movement from away from a hard money to like this new fiat money standard. The whole world is now just like not tethered to anything, right? The world's money supply. So now
We
you've
tell
got
it to
this
money machine goes brrr
brr,
at
yeah,
when it wants to,
exactly,
and
at
it
terminal
devaluates
velocity.
the yeah.
Yeah. So now you've got an incentive that's baked in for manufacturers to sell you a good as quickly as possible again. Now that makes sense with a consumer item, but when you're buying something like a durable good, like a fan, you'd expect that thing to last for a long time. But the incentive now is if I'm going to pay you X rand for a fan and my rands are devaluing the whole time,
Right.
like I'm gonna try. What I want to do is I'm not too worried about the purchasing power of my rand because it's devaluing anyway. So like the perverse incentive thing plays out. Whereas previously, if I was tethered to gold, my purchasing power is increasing over time. So if I'm going to buy something, the Afrikaans saying "koop een keer, koop goed," like they owe, like I'm going to buy it once and I'm going to buy it to last. I'm going to buy that fan that's
Yeah.
going to last 50 fucking years. So, and that is because my money was increasing purchasing power all the time. So I'm only going to spend it when I really have to, as opposed to the way things are after post 1971, where now like my money is losing its purchasing power. So I actually want to get rid of it as quickly as possible. And this is not a conscious thing that happens with people. It's just innate in the system. And like people, innately understand it because your money's losing its purchasing power. So get rid of it. So manufacturers now, whereas under a gold standard, they were like, okay, I need to work really hard to make a really good product to ensure that when someone does actually buy something from me, it lasts them as long as possible. So when they do come back to buy a second one, they're going to buy from me.
Right.
It might be 30 years from now, but it creates a long time, like a low time preference society, like a long time
I've got
horizon
a
with planning.
client lifetime cycle of legit a human's lifetime.
Yeah, yeah. And as soon as the money gets fucked, where like you can now money is being printed ad infinitum, it creates this consumer culture where now all of a sudden the manufacturer is incentivized to have that thing break as quickly as possible, to sell you a new one as quickly as possible, to have the product life cycle churn as quickly. And this just creates plastic in oceans. It fills up our landfills. It ends, to quote Tyler Durden, filling our lives with shit, buying shit from people we don't like for things we don't need. Like it's the Fight Club thing. But like I really
It's
think
it's
consumerism is driven
it's
by the money printing.
Ricki. It's sorry. Quick interjection. Zero waste. Where we actually take all our organic waste, we put it with the worms in the garden, or it gets used, right? All our plastics, all our tins, all our grass gets put together, and we actually take that shit and we once every 3 months we take it away. We get some money for it, and then hopefully we invest it in something like our solar panels or our batteries or whatever. Depends on what kind of setup you have, but that's exactly it, right? You're part of the problem if you keep consuming like something. What do you call those worms? Remember in school when we used to have those worms? You give them the mulberry leaves and they'll eat them,
Like a
and then they're
silkworm.
spins, silkworm, right? But to a certain extent, you can give them all the leaves in the world, and then they'll only produce an X amount of silk. It's the same principle. Um, the environment can only take so much pollution or so much shit. I'm not one of the climate alarmists. I actually think the world is far more resilient than these people let on. I also think that the climate alarmists are anti-human, and that's a whole
Yeah.
podcast. We'll have that one.
Yeah, no, we definitely gonna
They're
have that
far
one.
more for the bugs and for Earth than they are for humans. And with regenerative agriculture, like Uncle Angus said, like we can actually have a world where we can have abundance, but still have a teeming natural world, right? Um, so I'm not anti-human. I'm not a climate change advocate or anything. All I'm saying is there are ways that we can do small things as we are. Be you in a rural area, be you in the cities, you can grow something. You can do something to actually sequester carbon dioxide if it's global warming is one of your main concerns. I want to see how many people that is worried about carbon dioxide and global warming. Have they ever planted anything? Have they actually looked at ways how to sequester carbon dioxide? And I can tell you they haven't. They just look at planes and cars and they see them as the enemy, but they have not brought one seed into existence. And one seed becomes a plant, and the plant actually consumes carbon dioxide. This is the problem that we have across the globe. Everyone is alarmist, but everyone can contribute to the solution by growing their own food.
So I had this debate with a friend of mine the other day. He works in climate change, and it's his industry, and I respect that. But he was telling me that he thinks the single biggest problem facing mankind is climate change, and I was saying, no, I don't agree with you. I think the single biggest problem facing mankind is plastic pollution, because plastic pollution, that shit doesn't go away, man. Every single piece of plastic we've ever made is still with us, and it's not just with us; it's in the fucking sea, like where people don't see it, but it's all there. You know, you can go and look; you'll find it. And
Ricki, but I'll also add to that. Sorry to interrupt you there. A lot of growers of vegetables and everything and biologists realize that plants are used to more carbon dioxide that's currently in supply. So there's a discrepancy between the demand and supply for carbon dioxide in plants. Because when we supply them with a bit more, they grow substantially more, which means at some stage there was much more of that carbon dioxide in the air, right?
yeah, we know this from core samples that CO2 levels have been much higher than they are now, and they've been much lower than they are now. And O2 levels have been much higher, and nitrogen levels have changed. Like the climate is dynamic. It's not the static.
It's not a dynamic thing. It's not the static thing that you can control. And dollar for dollar, you have to do a cost-benefit analysis that makes sense. You can't just say, okay, cool, we're going to bring down carbon dioxide by these means. What's the cost-benefit analysis? Benefit when we take a dollar for dollar. If we don't see a big benefit, and there's a lot of projects out there where they are throwing dollars at it, millions, it might even be billions, where there's really no benefit. And we should focus on the things that actually benefits.
Well, if you're anti-human, it's very easy to make the arguments for climate change, because you're like, the aim is to have less people, humans or parasites on this earth. We must have less people. It's okay if 1 billion or 2 or 3 or 4 die because, like, you know, they're a parasite and a plague anyway. As long as it's not me, you know, it's kind of the argument.
No charcoal powered generation, because
Yeah.
these developing countries can't develop because they're burning charcoal, which we also did ad infinitum to get where we are at right now. Where we are. But they must never do that, and we must give them nuclear.
No, nuclear is not on the table for greenies. They don't believe in nuclear.
Oh, you're right. Yeah. They like fuck nuclear. Yeah.
So they must have this energy. There's a super energy dense resource available to them, coal. They can't use that because that's putting CO2 there. So they must use solar or wind or whatever, and have a less energy dense resource, and therefore have a less rich life, basically, because like energy usage directly correlated to like standard of living. So basically, these people are fundamentally anti-humanist, and they're saying, let the poor people stay in squalor and stay poor. It's fucking horrific, man. Like
it's the worst.
It's the worst.
So exactly that, right? So what they're saying is like, okay, Africa, you've got abundant resource. You shouldn't use it. We used it, but you can't.
Yep.
So keep all of those people that can have jobs out of the industry. We're going to give you a nuclear or something, right? No, they get nuclear. It's like, okay.
No, we're going to give you solar panels, bro.
Yeah, no, you're right. So that, like, but wait, we green. Nuclear is bad. So we're going to give you solar. Then what happened in Texas when shit really happened is they add...
When snow hit the fan.
Yeah, when snow it's the fan, right?
Snow froze the fan.
Yeah. So what they do is they add a levy to basic electricity. So the poor people pay more per unit of electricity, and then everyone pays more for electricity. So electricity becomes more expensive. And as you mentioned, the moment when electricity or energy becomes more expensive, people become poorer for it,
Human
right?
development goes down.
Goes
Yeah.
down because there's
Yeah.
no economic growth, because now my cost of living has gone up substantially, right? And
Yeah.
then, okay, cool. So Texas froze over, but if they had their charcoal stations up or nuclear stations, that wouldn't happen
Yeah.
at all. But because of the environment and our self-righteous path, we have to do it. So it's going back to what we said earlier, where people try to be self-righteous about things and policies, and they actually, just like the government, harms more than it actually solves. And
Yeah.
the government also has this perfect thing where they go out, they create the problem, they shoot you in the stomach and say, hey, we've got a hospital, and then they point
Yeah.
you to the hospital. This is what governments have been doing for generations, and
Yeah.
we should actually get out of that loop, because that's toxic for everyone involved.
And I say this with all due respect, but people who advocate for other people's well-being and say they're doing something for you or for the public good, with all due respect, they can go fuck themselves. They cannot be trusted at all, because people who come with the look of like, I'm here to help and I'm doing this for the public good, are the most sneaky. It's a very, very powerful power play, because
Utilitarianism for the sake for your own benefit or for the greater
yes,
good is always the
yes,
most
yes,
bullshit ever. Arnold Schwarzenegger
every
saying like
yes,
"Screw your freedom," wow,
yeah.
wow, fuck off, Arnold. Like,
Yeah, the
great
roids,
acting.
the roids addle that motherfucker's brains.
Yeah, no, something happened there, dude. Like, he used to
Yeah.
be
No,
a
he's in
fucking
California
cool,
for too long.
upstanding guy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Fair
Yeah.
enough.
Yeah.
That would erode everyone and anyone's brain that I know.
Also, he's from Austria. Settle down, Arnold. We know what you fucking Austrians are like.
Austria is an interesting country, right? So I just want to add something
Yeah.
unrelated. If you want to become a citizen and you have to actually buy your citizenship, I think it's like 1 million or 2 million euros. It's like a ridiculous amount. We spoke about
So they can
before
so they can
this.
deploy apartheid against you. No thanks.
Yeah, it's terrible. Like, you and I
Yeah.
spoke about this earlier, and I think in the next episode we actually will talk about self-sufficiency and the practical steps, right? And I know Austria is one of those countries where you have to pay like 1 million euros to get it, and I'm like, it's not fucking worth it. If I go to Panama, I pay 5,000 US dollars. Let's call it 80 to 90,000 rand, and you don't have, it's a 5 year residential program, right? So in 5 years you can be there as much or as little as you want. You have to be there once a year, but obviously if you want to get the residency, you have to actually start a business or something there. But if you don't have income from Panama and you get income from South Africa or the US, you don't pay any income tax on that, by the way. You don't pay any corporate tax on that. That's the amazing thing. So I hope in our next episode we can take those things. I actually prepared a whole thing about it, but like you said, we had a cool organic chat today that just went wherever it needed to go. But I actually had all these notes like prepped for this
I
chat.
told you, bro. Your notes are useless. They're going nowhere.
I know, but I like, next time I actually want to give them because they're actually very usum. But
Yeah, yeah.
you
I'm
know,
gonna derail it next time too.
it's fine. I'll ring you back. Because I also want to talk about the Western Cape, in the context of smaller towns, what towns are amazing, and if you can maybe just before we
Bredasdorp.
end this, so
Bredasdorp,
Bredasdorp,
sense of the universe,
I'm
guys.
looking at Tilbach and Montague as well,
Oh yeah.
property
Let me
wise.
tell you something.
So
You can
go.
judge how good a town is gonna be by how many gay people there are in it. Napier, Greyton, Berrydale, Swellendam, Bredasdorp's got his fair share of gays. They sort a place out. Telling you, it's a
The
golden
guys
recipe.
at
If you
the guys at Flair, like it's no one's business to a town, and they
Clarence,
open the
surely
coolest
Clarence has
net
got a whole
spots.
bunch of gays.
Yeah. No, they've
Yeah,
got their fair.
they
Oh,
added
they
they
do.
added a
They do.
touch of culture. They had some nice restaurants. Riebeck Castile, Riebeck West. It's great. You know where's got no gay people? Secunda, shithole.
Everything is grey and fucking.
Yeah,
Dreary, most
yeah,
probably.
exactly. There's no gay people living there.
Yeah. No, that Ricki, I'll ask you for advice. I'm going to ping you individually, like for that. But yeah, dude, like I said, in the last year, what I've experienced, this, just going state proof, growing my own food. I can't live off the grid in a place that I rent, right? So I still have to,
Mm,
wherever I'm moving, I'm
yeah,
going to get solar panels and batteries. But
yeah.
my brother on the farm already, they're completely off the grid. They've got a whole, they've actually, it's insane. They've got the solar panels outside. They have a whole room with batteries um, internally, and then it's also air conditioned. But the air
Mm.
conditioner is not a conventional air conditioner. It's one that's
They're using heat pump.
they've it's not a heat pump. There's a term for it. It can regulate its own power output, right? So if it's
Mm,
not working hard, it can actually bring down its power usage, and
mm.
that's how it works. So a lot of appliances aren't optimized for solar because they go
Yeah,
on and they're like, fuck yeah, they go full
yeah,
power and everything. But there are others that actually they go low and slow. So LED lights is a good example of this, and that aircon is the same thing. It goes on low power when it's cold in the room. It won't draw a ton of power, and that aircon keeps the whole room cool, and then it distributes the power to the rest of the house. So it's an incredible system. They've got a bigger, more intensive one. There's also pivots running on it. Um, but for myself, I think everyone should just start with, okay, buy a bloody UPS to power your home router and have a
yeah.
surge plug or two in your house, right? And then
Man,
also
that's
once you put in it,
just sorry to interrupt you on that. That is the most important thing is powering your router
right,
because without internet you cannot work, and
you
without
cannot
work
work. You cannot be
you
productive. You
can't make
cannot
money.
build.
You can't be
You cannot make
productive
money.
if you work in the intellectual space. Like you can't so powering your
If you're
router is
knowledge,
vital.
if you're yeah, if you're a knowledge
Yeah,
worker, you can't work 100%.
yeah,
And then once you have a UPS, and once you say, okay, cool, this is my future state of my house, buy an inverter that's going to be the one inverter that's going to power it all. Pay 3 grand more for that inverter, or 5 or 6, because have one inverter that can take a fuck ton of batteries, and it's going to be the final thing in your house, right? So pay more for your inverter. And when you've got a good inverter, you just add batteries to that. And you add batteries, and solar panels are cheap. That's not the big expense with solar,
yeah,
right?
yeah. And they
The
last
big
for 25
expense is the
years.
battery.
Yeah,
Exactly.
the bat.
And
Yeah,
then you also have to put money away, like $500 or $250 a month. You're not paying ESCOM anymore. Like, let's say you're off the grid, or let's say you're not off the grid. Start by putting in 250 a month or 500. Work out in the time, like you say, when you have to refresh the system. How much
yes.
should I have put in the system monthly? And
Can
also
I
probably
can
don't
I
put it.
can I give you a tweak on the system, which is one that I've been working on,
Go.
which is so you know that your demand on your electricity supply is not even throughout the day. You've got a curve that it follows, right? Like
Right.
there's like when you're cooking, etc. So first of all, when you're cooking, you should be cooking on gas if you're doing an off-grid system because you don't want to be cooking on electricity because that pushes your
There we
battery
go.
requirements, your inverter requirements, everything goes up. What you want to do is you want to load balance because whenever you've got surplus power, you can't pump that back into the grid because South Africa don't work like that, folks. And if it does, you got to comply with all kinds of bullshit regulations. So that's silly. What you want to do is install a Bitcoin
Go
miner. At
punch Guerrero on the dick, and then
yeah
also yeah for one, just do
yeah
that first.
yeah fucking Guido, whatever that guy. So what you do is go and buy yourself a secondhand Bitmain S9 and miner, cheap, old, trusted tech. The shit works. You can pick them up for like under 10 grand now. And what you do is you then load balance. So whenever you've got surplus power, that Bitcoin miner needs to come on. And it's mining, like in the background. And it's consuming your surplus power that you're not using, that otherwise would literally be wasted. It's just
That's a
increasing
very
the
interesting
efficiency of
way
your system.
using that.
And then what you're doing, like your Bitcoin miner gives you two things. It gives you Bitcoin that it's spinning off, which you need to accumulate and hodl that shit for 20 years, because this will pay for your entire farm if you just do this for 20 years. You hodl that Bitcoin. And then the second thing it gives you, which is very important, is it gives you heat, because heat is a big byproduct. Oh, the third one it gives you is noise, but no one cares about noise. No one wants that. But so you get heat, right? So this heat that comes out the other side, this can be used to heat water, because water heating is like 30% of your electricity bill. So now you have Bitcoin miner pushing out heat. Other side of the heat, you have a heat pump. So a heat pump, what it does is it sucks in air on the one side and strips the heat out of the air, puts it through a heat exchange. Then that heat gets transferred to water, and then cold air comes out the other side, like air conditioner air. So now what you're doing is you're taking 50-degree heat that's coming out of your Bitcoin miner, putting that through a heat pump and using that to heat hot water, and you're getting cold air coming out the other side. Now that can go into your house to cool your house, or you can cycle it back around to come into your Bitcoin miner on the other side. So you've got colder air coming into your Bitcoin miner to improve your efficiency there. You can also take some of that hot air to go and heat your house during winter as well. But now you've got a 30% saving on heating water, because now because the water in your hot water taps, you want it to be about 50 degrees, which coincidentally is the temperature coming out of your Bitcoin miner. So you're spending 30% less energy on heating water. So your Bitcoin miner is basically giving you the free hot water and cold air as a byproduct, and it's using all the surplus capacity that's sitting in your energy system. Because in the middle of the night, using fuck all energy, you can be mining Bitcoin out of your surplus capacity in your batteries. Throw up a wind turbine to add a little bit of extra, just to ameliorate that, and all of a sudden you've got a system that's quite sustainable. And now this is something I've thought about, but I haven't run any numbers on this, so I could be wrong. I hope if someone's listening to this and they're excelling client, please go and work out the system. But basically, if you can accumulate solar panels and batteries throughout your productive life before you retire, and you end up with a system that's 300% of your power requirements for your house, or 200 to 300% of your power requirements, and then you slowly accumulate Bitcoin miners over that time as well. By the time you hit retirement, you've paid off this whole system. You've got a big energy production system with Bitcoin miners that is now producing you passive income in your retirement, because now you're mining Bitcoin, and you need 100%. The 100% is as much you need to run your homestead, and the remaining 200% you're just mining Bitcoin with. And that's your retirement fund, man. And if you're really clever, you use the bank's money out of your access bond to pay for your solar system, because they'll give you a loan for that out of your access bond, plus your Bitcoin miners. And I don't know, someone clever. I'm outsourcing responsibility. I should do this myself, but run the numbers. I think it could work. And to be honest, I used to be a financial advisor, right? I'm going to go out on a limb and I'm going to wager this will be a much better ROI than a retirement annuity.
I want to be the devil's advocate before we end this and say that I know every few years Bitcoin actually cuts how lucrative it is to mine. So I don't know what it looks like in a 10 or 30 year span. You can correct me if I'm wrong.
Theoretically, you're correct, because you've got halving cycles, but it has never been more lucrative to mine Bitcoin than it is today because of the price.
Okay. So the price is okay. So
the price offsets the halving, right?
Yes. Okay. So that actually makes sense. So can you explain that mechanism just for the audience, so they understand why that happens, and
so
over how many years do they halve, and all
every 4
that?
years.
Okay, go.
Yep. Every 2016 blocks. That doesn't make sense. Anyway, it's 4 years. 2016 is your difficulty adjustment. Anyway, every 4 years, you've got a halving cycle where the amount of Bitcoin that is issued with every block gets cut in half. So currently we're at 6.25. So the next halving cycle is going to be cut to 3.125 Bitcoin. But the price of Bitcoin is going up exponentially. So even though you're getting less Bitcoin out, so in the beginning, when Bitcoin mining started, it was 50 Bitcoin per block that was being mined. The price of Bitcoin was like $1 or whatever, less than $1. So you're getting $50.
Does Bitcoin become scarce effectively?
Yes.
Per mining cycle, and then as a resource, there's more people interested. So that Satoshi actually took into account that it will become
yes.
more rare in time. Okay, well played.
More scarce, because
was scarce.
He knew.
And that's
He
unlike
knew that
fiat. Fiat is
governments.
the
He knew that
opposite. With
governments are just
government,
going to be printing, bro. He knew it.
especially
Human
now, dude,
nature,
especially now with the COVID regime,
of
they're just
course.
like fucking printing that shit.
But so we didn't get into this, and something I do want to touch on before we finish, like your take on Bitcoin. Where do you stand?
I think it's incredible because it's the opposite of fiat currency. Um, it actually becomes scarcer with time, and it becomes a kind of more rare commodity. Secondly, it bypasses VAT, and it bypasses all taxes known to man, especially if you've got a wallet that's detached from an exchange. You've
Especially
got
if
the
you're
power.
mining at home on your own solar power.
There we go. But also, if you're doing transactions, right? So there's a lot of vendors out there. My current seed supply company that I buy from, I've just been using Bitcoin and Ethereum to buy seeds, and I've been growing my own food with that.
That's amazing.
My my my
Sorry to
Ethereum
interrupt you. Who's
balance,
who's buying
yeah,
who you
it's
buying your
it's
seed from?
called living
Oh,
seeds.
Living Seeds. They accept Bitcoin.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
which they do.
Nice.
So basically, I started with like I think 1 grand of Ethereum. Now I've got like 6 grand. I never became a millionaire or anything, but I like it's just been it's just been increasing with time, right? But what I also want to do is I'm in the IT industry, so I can set up a Microsoft 365 tenant for people, Microsoft Teams, remote collaboration, all that shit. And then also I want to consult in this space, right? So I want to create a garden that gives you herbs, and it gives you mushrooms, and it gives you all of these nice things, and provide you with seeds and everything. So obviously I'm going to go with them as a producer and a supplier, because they're in Bitcoin. But I'm also going to go into my local community and say, right, you can get my services at a 10 or 15% discount. What do I do to achieve that, right? I just mark my services up 15% on the normal levels, and I still get the money that I want. People should actually, you should create an incentive for fellow crypto people to actually buy your service as is, right? And that's how you do it. You should create an incentive. And I think, Ricki, I don't know how you have actually used your community to actually create incentives, right? And in my opinion, it should be product, tools, and skills that you can trade. So if someone's a dentist and they fucking fix your tooth, you might be an IT guy that can do their IT for a month or two, or you can do a project for them, or vice versa. We start trading in skills, right? Or tools. Tools is easy. In Clarence area, there's a ton of apples. So I can go and I can go to any apple farm and make a ton of apple cider, apple juice, or apple cider vinegar, and I can go and sell it. And you get the B grade apples that can't go to the shops because they look shit, but actually, Ricki would know that the apple is still perfectly fine, nutritionally wise, if obviously if the company follows good growing practice.
It's just
And
covered
you
in
can just,
fucking pesticide. That's all.
if they do that, right? But if they are
Sure, yeah.
organic
I mean, they're
and true
all.
to
Oh,
honest,
okay, yeah.
I don't know. I don't know, Ricki. What is your perspective? Like before we knock this off, right? We at I think we're at the average time of your show when it ends. What is your perspective on, especially the permaculture people? Not permaculture
Mm.
people, people that actually grow trees and are stewards of trees and stuff. Do they all go the Monsanto kind of globalist route, and they follow the same regime, or do people actually think like, fuck it, I'm going to do things differently, organically? What's been your experience? I mean, I know you're not in the industry as is, but I take it you know a lot of people.
Yeah, so I
um,
used to be. I used to work in the space, and everyone likes the idea of organic until a pest hits them, and then when they've just spent like 10 million rand on fertilizers and setting up their orchard, they're like, oh, fucking bring that poison. And this is the problem, man. Like if your crop is facing a infestation 3 weeks before harvest, you're not supposed to spray anything, because like then woolies won't take it or checkers won't take it because it's out, so you can't export, etc. But like a lot of shenanigans going. Like people don't pay attention, in the middle of the night if you're spraying poison. So this is why, man. Like if you're gonna take this shit seriously, you really need to go and shake your farmer's hand and speak to him personally and find out who he is and why he
Yeah.
does things and why he's farming organically. Like Farmer Angus, for example. You speak to Farmer Angus about like why he's rearing cattle the way he does, why he's grass feeding them and not feeding them on grains. Like he's doing this intentionally. So for a fact that this guy you're going to get the best quality meat in South Africa from that guy. And the same for your farmers. If you go to like, there's a couple of biodynamic farmers around, like Rainico wines, for example, are biodynamic wines. Like they're not spraying their wines with pesticide. Not their wines. They're spraying their vineyards with pesticide. So it's about and it comes back to this delegation of responsibility thing, like globalism and like internet and connectivity has like connected us more than ever before, but it's disconnected us so much from like our food system. So
I think
going
it
to
is a fight
find
between globalism and localism, 100%.
yep yep yep
With
so
good
go and
practice,
see
of course.
yeah, go and meet your farmer. But when everyone lives in a city, you can't do that, well, you can, but no one does. So but I'm seeing a resurgence. Like today, I put in an order with a local grass-fed beef farmer who's popped up in the Stellenbosch area near Farmer Angus as well. And I was like, this is amazing. I have now two guys to choose from that I can buy grass-fed beef from that I know there's no hormones, there's none of this bullshit. You order it online, it arrives a few days later. It's great, but like you chat to the guy, personally. You're like, I'm buying from you for X, Y, Z reasons. He's like, oh yeah, cool. This is
Yeah.
why we're doing it,
And
So
you
the
can actually go to
localism
the farm.
thing,
Like if you're that
yeah,
invested, you can
yeah.
actually fucking go to the
And
farm
he wants you to
and
come to
see
the
it.
farm. Yeah,
Now that is encouraging. The people that
yeah,
don't want to come to the farm will say like, "Oh, you are stupid," or "You should not be asking these questions." That's a
yeah,
fucking red light, man. Like
yeah.
that's the kind of producers you should stay away from. The people that
If
invite you
anyone,
to their farm,
yes, if anyone has ever
that's good.
been to a pork like I don't want to say farm, but like animal husbandry, like intensive like animal agriculture, pork, chickens, even beef feedlots. The most pork is the worst. Pork feedlots are the worst places on this earth. It's fucking Mordor. So if you can go to a pig farmer who's willing to let you come to his farm because he's got free range pork, like that's gonna be a pleasant experience. You're gonna see the pigs running around there. But if you go to like a pork
And they're not
feedlot, it is
nearly as
horrific.
smelly as you think. Like people think about pork farms, and usually you're right. It's a smelly
Yeah,
fucking
it's
shit
horrific.
show.
And
But
they're
when
like
they
20 in a
are
pen like this.
yeah, but when they are free ranging, it's a complete
Yep.
different story, right? And
And
then we
especially
get
in the regenerative agriculture like way of doing it, they're very free range and like they're
yeah,
happy.
dude, for sure. I mean, I'm thinking of sorry, and again, we need to have another show because all my notes, I need to live these things. Um, You've got slugs in your garden. Fucking ducks.
Yep.
Ducks eat
Yep.
slugs, and they don't fuck with
Yep.
your vegetables unless you've
Yes.
got a ripe strawberry or a small tomato. They will leave it alone. Chickens
Mm.
are terrible, but if
Yep.
you've got a movable chicken coop, they'll actually eat all the grass in the area, fertilize it with their dung and urine, and you can actually
Yeah.
plant in that area as you move
It's,
the cage.
it's free
And you don't
fertilizer.
have free fertilizer, and you don't have to put the effort in to spit the land and optimize it for a crop. You can just go
Mm.
in the little areas that you put it in, and then just like have a square by square pitchfork, and then you just put the seedling into the soil, and it's already fertilized, and you're good. Um, I think, and we can probably have in the next episode, like I said, self-sufficiency with all the steps,
Mm.
but also just permaculture. Permaculture can be an entire episode where you just
Oh
use
yeah.
nature instead of working against it. And you can get
Yeah.
the benefit of far less labor, but with huge yields,
Mm.
especially on a small scale. And then eventually you can build it out. I think the problem is people try to create an insane amount of yield with money as quickly as possible. And
Mm.
I think that's when the industrial kind of normal way becomes appealing. For
Yeah,
me,
trying
it
to build a
doesn't.
factory.
Yeah, but I think if you start organic and you want to expand that, you kind of learn, and then you're like, okay, cool. I know now
Yeah.
what I have to add, but it's in a far more natural way, and it doesn't fuck up the ecology or the soil as much as it usually would.
Mm,
And I think that's what we should strive for, from a
absolutely.
self-sustainability perspective.
Absolutely. I think that's a good point to leave it on. But Carter, before we go, I've got a couple of, I don't want to say ad reads because we don't really do ads on the show, but what we do is we shill companies that we believe in. And I've got a couple of new ones. Obviously, we got Fraser's Folly on here, which I've given more than enough airtime to. The other one, a good friend of mine, friends of mine actually, run a company called Freedom Farms. Freedom Farms is the best quality horticultural soil you can get on the market, predominantly for the marijuana
I
industry.
approve this,
Um,
and the only reason why I'm not shilling them mass is because they're in the Western Cape, and for
yeah,
me to get that to the Free State will cost me
an arm and a
an
leg.
arm and a leg, and
Yeah,
then some.
but yeah,
But Freedom Farms are
amazing.
incredible. If you're in the Western Cape area, you want to grow
Yeah,
shit. They have what we call super swells. They've got all those
yeah,
good microbiomes, all the
yep.
nutrients you need in your soil. I'm sorry, Ricki, I'm taking over your ad, but I'm very passionate about them.
This is the best ad. And Freedom Farms did not ask me to say this, but like this is like what we're trying to do here is we're trying to rep companies that we really agree with and we like what they're doing. And I know that Freedom Farm soil is good because I was involved in the creation of it. I did consulting work for them back in the day, and that's actually how I met the guys. And we helped them, or I helped them initially set up some of their soils and do probiotics, and then they've obviously taken it to like all kinds of new levels. They got air pots, so if you want to grow your weed or your tomatoes in a nice pot, it's these fabric pots that just there's so much oxygen through to your roots. You have like amazing grows without any of the pests. And also they do liquid nutrients, fermented liquid nutrients. So like stage 1 and stage 2 nutrients for veg and flower cycle. Really cool stuff. Then the other project, guys who've been listening to the show for a while know, but Bitcoin Ekasi or the Surfer Kids is a NPO out of Mossel Bay. And what they're doing is trying to emulate the Bitcoin beach model in Mossel Bay. Brilliant stuff. If you're a dev, please go reach out to them. They need some help with setting up Lightning wallets, etc. If you're a Lightning dev, otherwise send them some Sats. They can always use them. They're doing great work. Then Exonumia, we've spoken about them quite a few times. Exonumia is an open source Bitcoin translation project where they're translating seminal Bitcoin works into indigenous African languages. Open source, you can go and contribute or send them some Sats. Both Exonumia and Bitcoin Ekasi got funding recently, so we're very, very stoked. We're going to see some very cool things come out of that. And oh yes, my company, Bitvice. Don't forget about us. The only place to buy self-custody Bitcoin in South Africa. We never hold your Bitcoin for you. We've dropped our minimums recently. You can register in under 2 minutes, place an order in under 30 seconds, and we dropped our minimum down to $5,000, soon to come even lower. We're working on some cool stuff. Also, we've got Bitcoin wills. So if you want to do some succession planning, like you bought some Bitcoin, but you're worried a car hits you, or you get the Rona, or maybe you get a vaccine injury or something, you want to make sure that your family can get your Bitcoin. We've got a Bitcoin will so that your wife and kids can get your Bitcoin. So reach out to us. We do a private consultation for you and set you up. Oh, also, Farmer Angus, best free range grass fed beef in the country. Cool, shilling done. Carter, thank you so much. Oh, also, where can people find you? Where can they track down the work you do? I know you got a podcast. Where can they find you?
I've become more quiet on the podcast. I want to actually write more. I've
Mm,
realized on the podcast you have to become very reliant on guests. I don't like that. I've had a few drops and a few bad experiences, but I just want to create content that's authentic, true to the point, and
mm,
I can verify it. Um, what will be happening is my primary source is on Twitter. Find me on Twitter at State Proof Stoic. Um, I'll be I'll be writing much more weekly about all the topics I talk about, be it composting, be it growing stuff, where to get the best nutrient dense products or anything as that. And Ricki, I'll definitely knock on your door because I mean
mm,
you're
please do.
trained in this, right? So we don't have a Freedom Farms in the Free State, but I'm moving to the Western Cape, so I'll probably link up there.
Definitely.
So sure, I'll link up with that. But yeah, as of this moment, Twitter, I will be having a weekly blog because I owe that to myself, just to write a bit more and develop those skills. And it will be
Perfect.
launching from my Twitter profile.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Cool. So that's at State Proof Stoic. You guys can track Carter down there. All right, bro.
Yeah.
We're going to do this again soon. Guaranteed.
Yeah,
Maybe get
I
a bit of a
think
panel on.
we didn't even cover everything I prepared for, and here
So
we
much we
went on.
didn't cover.
But again, I also like you. I value organic conversations that just go the way that the wind flows. So yeah, it's interesting like that. But Ricki, I just want to thank you for the opportunity, and then hopefully next time we can have a structured conversation about everything, and then take it from there.
Brilliant. All right, guys. One last thing. I've never said this before, so this is the first. So please don't forget to what's the thing? Like, subscribe, share the video. People like agriculture and Bitcoin. This is a good one for them. And follow us on YouTube. Also, you can find the audio version of this on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and most importantly, Podcasting 2.0 platform, Breeze Wallet. If you're into Bitcoin and you've got a Lightning wallet, head over to Breeze. Our podcast is there, and you can stream sats to us, and that helps support the show and get cool content. All right, that's a wrap, guys. Until next week, Carter, we'll see you soon. Cheers, guys.
Cheers, man. Bye.